All right, we are live. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Becoming Pro Artist. This interview is going to be an opportunity for us to get to know our favorite artists, to hear their insights and their story. Just a reminder that if you go to sentientacademy.com, then to courses, and search for Becoming Pro Artist, this streaming session will be placed there, as well as other past and upcoming events. You can always watch through YouTube, but if you'd like to participate, please switch over to the Sentient website. If you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat below and we'll spend some time reviewing them throughout the interview. My name is Emma Jean Wilkins. I'm the product manager here at Sentient, and I help run the behind the scenes of the website and our social media. We are joined by Julie, our product manager, and she may pop in occasionally. Now, I am happy to introduce my friend and landscape artist, Sarah Ann Wilson. Sarah is a Utah-based artist. She studied art at Brigham Young University and received a BA in art education in 2017. She is an avid hiker, a national parks enthusiast, and a fangirl of the Utah landscape. She has spent most of her life in Utah. Sarah was born in Iceland and spent her childhood years exploring Europe. Her interest in painting was inspired by the old masters exhibited in the museums she frequented, but it was her artist grandpa's lap that she first learned to wield a paintbrush. Sarah attended high school in Sanpete County, Utah, and was greatly inspired by the nearby artist community in Spring City. It was in that small historic town that she discovered a love and passion for plein air painting. Plein air was the natural consequence of Sarah's two great loves, outdoors and paintings. Welcome, Sarah. We're so glad to have you here with us. Let's talk about school. What has your educational journey been like to become a professional artist? Did you learn growing up? What did you think of college? Any workshops you've taken?
Yeah, as you mentioned kind of in my introduction there, my first experience with art was with my grandpa. And I'm sorry, like I should always give a caveat when I'm about to speak, like I'm a crier, so I might cry a couple times, and I apologize for that. It's just my I had a very special relationship with my grandpa. And yeah, he was an artist. He actually painted this piece behind me.
Lovely.
And so yeah, I lived in Europe, but every summer we would come to the States and visit him and visit my other family. But I spent my summers with him and in his studio, and he was gracious enough to, when I was like 6, to give me a brush and say like, have at it, have fun. So yeah, I would say that was the beginning of my art education. When I was 12, we moved back to Utah, and I did middle school. I attended high school down in Mount Pleasant, Utah, and I had a great art teacher there that really, I think he saw my potential, he saw my talent and really pushed me. And I think he was the one that really, I guess, made me feel like, hey, I could make a career out of this if I wanted to. This is something that I could pursue. Yeah, and then I attended BYU. I wasn't quite certain what I wanted to do with my life at that point, as most like 18-year-olds, I think, experience. So I took some prerequisites for civil engineering, which is what all of my other siblings had done up until that point. And that wasn't for me. I looked into marketing and communication, and that wasn't for me. I had a mentor, artist mentor, kind of tell me, he's like, well, if you can see yourself doing anything else besides art, I would recommend doing that. Because I don't know. And that was kind of an intimidating thing for me. I'm like, well, I guess I could see myself doing it, but it eventually turned into, yeah, like I think art is my passion. Art is what I see myself doing forever. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I focused on getting a degree in art education. And I think, like, for me at that point, I was still kind of timid about entering into this, like, I'm going to be an artist mode. And I'm like, I've got to find a way to actually make money doing this. Because I think that's kind of the myth that we're told growing up. Like, if you're going to become an artist, you're going to be a starving artist, right? Which isn't true, but that's kind of the mindset I had. So pursued art education, got my degree in that. And I actually taught for a year at it was a whole district that I taught for, like 3 different elementary schools.
My
It was
goodness.
crazy. It was a nightmare, right? And I actually I got a position at a civil engineering firm doing graphic design for them. So it kind of came full circle. And I did that for 6 years actually. And then throughout that just have been kind of doing personal projects. And then it was 2020 hit and everybody was stuck inside, right? And I needed, like, all of a sudden we all had all this time on our hands. And so I kind of turned back into my art roots and I began doing just some little plein air gouache studies. And then that turned into, back into oil painting. And I gave myself a challenge. I think I had like maybe like 50 followers on Instagram, like nothing, right? It was all family. And I gave myself the challenge. I was like, I'm going to paint one painting a day for 50 days. I'm going to do an 8x10. I sold them for something ridiculously cheap. And that did 2 things. I was practicing, I was getting that habit, I was developing my skills. And then also, like, my name got out there because people were like, wow, I can get a nice piece of artwork for dirt cheap, right? And so that kind of got me the following and really kind of the client base that I have today as well. Sorry, you mentioned self-study or my education. Although like I learned a lot at BYU, like I said, I didn't pursue like illustration or just the studio arts pathway. I did art education, which kind of gave you a really broad scope of a little bit of everything and not a really in-depth like education into it. So self-study and those workshops have been really, really important to me in my development. I've done a few from Sentient. You said you
Sentient.
Sentient with a T. Okay.
Yes, hard T.
Sentient. I did from the online course from Ellie Wilson. She's incredible. And then I did the in-person workshop with her and was it Tristan Leach and Jane Ann Woodhead. Yeah. And that was really enlightening for me as well. And I did the David Dibble workshop, which also really awesome. And then I think I've been doing a lot of just reading. There's a lot of great content. When my husband unfortunately just graduated from BYU. I say unfortunately because now I don't have access to the library for free. But that I used to go and I would go and check out just all the art books. And there's just a ton of great content of like actual like masters, right? Who are giving you basically their whole thought process on everything, how they go about composing a landscape, how they use color, how the light works within a landscape. Like, just that was really important to me as well. There's Edgar Payne has a really great book. I'm blanking on the name of it right now. And then also John Carlson. Those are some really great books that I think gave me a ton of information that I was kind of lacking because of my lack of vigorous study of painting in school. Yeah. That's my history education. Yeah.
Perfect. So you kind of grew up with art and we kind of talked about this, but you wanted to build an art career. What time did you feel like you knew you didn't want to do art education anymore? How was that segue into your life?
I think unfortunately, like I was teaching, right? And unfortunately teachers they don't get compensated very well, right? And that unfortunately, like, I love teaching. I loved the actual like getting to connect with those students and be able to kind of inspire in them, hey, like, you can do this, and be able to teach them about art and see them get excited about it. But unfortunately, like, just the compensation and just the stress level that I was under, it wasn't the right fit for me. And I got this offer from, I had actually interned at this place while I was in school, and they gave me like, they're like, is this amount okay? Like for a full-time position? I was like, absolutely, like, yes, please. So that, I mean, it was just a matter of convenience for me at that point. Shout out to Horrocks Engineers, because I absolutely loved working there. I loved my team, just a great place to work. But at the same time, like, I was doing really technical stuff for an engineering firm, right? So not a ton of creativity there, you sprinkle it in where I can. But yeah, so I continued kind of pursuing my art within that graphic design as much as I could. And then just as my husband got his degree, we've been able to kind of switch roles here, where he's now become kind of the main provider now, and I'm at home with my daughter. So now is kind of the chance that I have. I can actually pursue the art full time. Like, and I think that was also, it was always kind of part of the plan in the back of my mind. Someday this will happen. But when the time is right, times and seasons of our lives that kind of allow that opportunity. So.
Exactly. How do you balance being a mother and an artist? I know that's got to be so difficult.
Yeah, it's tricky for sure. My art practice has changed quite a bit. My daughter is 18 months old. And so, a year and a half ago when she was born, like, your world kind of gets flipped upside down. And, all this time that I had for myself to pursue the things that I wanted to suddenly became wrapped up in like keeping this little squirming ball alive and happy, Yeah, so I did a piece kind of exploring the idea of like me being an artist and a mother, and anybody who is a mother or a parent understands that like you kind of lose, I don't want to say lose, but your identity gets a little bit washed out, right? As you're dedicating so much time to caring for your children and pursuing anything beyond like caretaking and motherhood and housekeeping and all of that stuff that comes with it. If you try and add something else to that, it is so stressful. It is so difficult. And so, yeah, I started, and I didn't like this. I started kind of feeling this like resentment, like, was this the right choice for me? And I don't want to ever say that like I regret having my baby. That is not the case. But it was just this new role that I was taking on, this new, like, I used to have like my full-time job as a graphic designer, and then it changed really drastically for me when I actually, because I worked part-time up until recently, and now I'm just full-time at home with my daughter. And yeah, so much of my identity was wrapped up in this, like, I work, I'm an artist, and it just felt like I was, what am I doing all day? I'm at home with a toddler, like, and this is difficult and this is hard, and I don't feel like I have time for myself. I don't feel like I'm pursuing, or my art career isn't progressing as much as I wanted it to. So yeah, if you want to pull up that piece.
Yeah, I can. One moment.
Yeah. I was really inspired by Denise, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, Denise Gosser, I think it is. And she did this whole project called Art After, which essentially talks about this whole idea, like, what does it look like to be a mother and an artist, right? Basically being an artist after being a mother, right? And she did a whole series, and she's continuing to, I think. They're just really small, like 5x7 pieces, where she starts the painting, and then as soon as she gets interrupted, she stops, and that's it. She never goes and completes it. And so she just has hundreds of these, and they're really sweet because then she writes on the back, like, here's what interrupted me, right? It's my toddler right now has his paint hands in my paint. He's smearing it all over right now. I need to stop. I can hear screaming downstairs. Like, she writes down the interruption. And it's this really sweet moment where you realize like that unfinished part of it actually makes the piece more beautiful. So I was thinking about that and contemplating that. And kind of this tension that I was having with being a mother and also being an artist. And so my daughter, in order to kind of keep her hands busy, as I was painting, I had a canvas or a panel that she was allowed to like use crayons on, paint on, whatever. And so
Mhm.
it started becoming this like scribbled mess. And so one day I pulled that up. I was like low on panels. So I picked that up and I was like, you know, it would be really cool if I did a piece in collaboration with her.
That's
Right.
amazing.
So kind of, I don't know, instead of fighting against this tension of like, I have to work against my daughter, like instead coming together and creating a piece where like she's actually adding beauty and contributing to it. So I was, I worked really hard. I would do one step, kind of blocking everything in, and then I would hand it over and I had zero control, right? She
Mhm.
would just go at it, have at it. Like I repainted our faces probably about 6 times because, she would be like, oh, mama, and like directly on my face, right? And so this whole idea of like, she is dismantling everything that I'm doing. Like she's dismantled my life at this point, but because of that, she's just adding so much beauty to it, right? And I love having kids is just an incredible thing because you get to experience the world all over again, right? Everything is seen through new eyes in her mind, right? Everything is new, everything is exciting, and it brings back that richness to life that, sometimes like we as adults we don't recognize. Yeah, so that's kind of what this piece is about. And yeah, I was primarily a landscape artist up until having my daughter, but as I've had my daughter, like the spaces that I'm exploring now, the things that I'm seeing around me, I can't get out as much with her. I try and I do, but I'm now kind of exploring the landscape within my home, that domestic scene. What does it look like to raising like my little daughter, and just kind of seeing those beautiful moments and capturing that. So, and I'm also working really small, right?
Mhm.
I do large pieces, but it's also like recognizing kind of, as I said before, the times and seasons of your life. I'm limited to small things right now because I can actually do that in the hour or two that she's taking a nap. Nap time is work time for me. So
But this piece is the larger, isn't it?
yes, this is quite a big. I think it's like 24 by 36, something along those lines. It's a big piece.
We have a question from the chat. It says, it's so easy to lose yourself during motherhood. How do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes like I know that this is good for me, right? I think we have this concept sometimes in our culture of this like martyr mother who just sacrifices everything, gives all her time, gives all of that up for her children. And I'm not saying sacrifice is a bad thing, but I think to the point where you are it's becoming detrimental to yourself and to like your mental health, your identity. I recognize that this is really good for me when I take that time for myself. It's a form of self-care for me. So yeah, when I put her down for a nap, I'm like, I want to go paint because I know this will make me feel like a little bit more of myself again, right? And so when I take that time to care for myself, to continue pursuing the things that I love, um, I think I'm then able to show up as a better parent, a better mother to my child after the fact, right? Because I'm not washed out, I'm not burnt out. Like I can actually be present
In the
and
moment.
enjoy those moments more, right? Because I'm not resenting her for taking everything away from me, and I don't think that should ever be like the mentality that we have. It's they're adding richness, but sometimes yeah, we need to take care of ourselves as well.
While we're here on this Canva document, let's go over your work and see how you kind of describe your art style and kind of these different seasons of life you're going through. So I'm just going to start at the front of our little presentation here. So this is kind of a little quick overview, but anything you'd like to say about these pieces?
Um, Yeah, like you said, like it's interesting because these were done, I think last year, maybe even longer ago. It was when my daughter was still small enough that like I could just stick her on the floor and she was fine. But it's also interesting to see how much my style has kind of progressed and the different things that you're drawn to and attracted to. At this time in my life, I think it was really attracted to those bright, vibrant colors. I really like when you can see the nature of the paint, you can see the brushwork.
Painterly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, painterly. Yeah, that's what it is. And you can see the texture of the paint. It looks like paint. I'm not like fiddling with it too much, blending everything. I'm really attracted to that type of work. And so that's what I've tried to emulate in these pieces, and just those bright, vivid colors.
I just love
Yeah.
right here in this yellow on this first painting. Those just make me so happy. My eyes are just so drawn to them. And this blue here, they're so lovely and
Yeah.
painterly.
And that's what I would say. I describe my style as impressionistic, painterly, and then just kind of expressive color as well.
Mhm.
So
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next page. I
yeah,
love
so
these.
these are actually, they're all plein air studies, just locally around my home. And you can kind of see that coming through again. I'm really drawn to color, and I probably exaggerate it too much, but it's not exactly what I'm seeing, but it's about like the feeling that you get as you're present in that place, right? So maybe it doesn't look exactly that color, but it's about expressing, those color relationships and making you feel present. You can feel that sunlight beating down on you, or those yellow golden fields.
We've got another question here. What is your favorite subject to paint, and what inspires you to use these colors?
Favorite subject to paint.
I see lots of mountains and fields here. I mean,
no, I think, it's kind of by the nature. Like I love our Utah. I love Utah. Like we are so blessed to be in a place where like we've got the mountains, we've got the water, we've got the red rock, it's just so geologically diverse, and I love that about Utah. I love our big mountains. I'm really partial, and you're not seeing it these ones, but I'm really partial to our Utah deserts. I love painting those red rock scenes. What is there like 1, 2? And maybe it doesn't show that it's my favorite subject, but anytime I can get out into southern Utah and paint some of those red rocks, it's so great. And I think maybe it's about the novelty of it, right? Here,
it's so different.
Yeah, from where I'm at right now, it's like sometimes it's you see it every day, so you're not seeing those beautiful nuances. But like when you approach a brand new, like alien almost landscape, as you do with like the red rocks, you're seeing those, oh wow, look at those shadow shapes, look at that color, in a way that you don't when you're surrounded by it every day. And I think that's what I really like about plein air, is that you're kind of forced to
stop and look.
You're forced to stop and look and really observe and really find those beautiful things, right?
Absolutely. That's one of the things I love about plein air so much, is that I could be walking by and not think about it, but if I'm plein air painting, I'm looking for a certain view that wasn't there before. Totally agree with that. Anything
and
about
as you paint something, sorry to interrupt, as you paint something, you come to understand it more, right? I think so much like in our culture today, it's like go, 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 take a snap, like post it on Instagram, like
forget about it.
Like with painting, you have to stop, you have to slow down, you have to observe, like so it's almost like a meditation. It's really peaceful and meditative as you go out and paint outdoors.
Yeah, this piece looks really familiar to me. Is this your Santa Barbara courthouse?
Yes it is.
Awesome. So I saw on your Instagram at Sarah Ann Art that you started to do wedding plein air sessions. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I haven't done any yet, Well, except for
Oh,
that one that you just pointed out, and that was kind of an accident. Yeah, so I have family that lives out in Santa Barbara. I've been visiting there since I was a kid. Like, absolutely love the area. If it wasn't so expensive to live there, that's where I would be right now. Um, but yeah, I went out last fall, and was just going around downtown Santa Barbara. This is the courthouse, which, unbeknownst to me, I guess it makes sense. It's the courthouse, but there's just constantly weddings going on. And sometimes really high profile ones, which I didn't realize. My cousins were telling me about it. But yeah, just little small ceremonies that happen out in the courtyard. And I had set up my plein air stuff, and I'm working on this piece. And in the background, I'm noticing, like, oh gosh, there's like an actual wedding taking place right behind me. Really, really small, intimate ceremony. But I almost felt uncomfortable being there because it was just so close. And I'm like, this is such a personal thing. And I feel like I'm being intrusive in some way. Anyways, so continued working. And then afterwards, a few minutes after everything had dispersed, one of the groomsmen came up to me and was like, hey, this looks great. I'm like, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And he's like, can I buy this from you? And he's like, I want to give
yes.
it as a gift to this couple. And I was like, absolutely. That is what a cool wedding gift, right? Like, to have
So
like the venue.
personalized.
Yeah, so personal, to have the venue that like you literally got married at, like painted on the day that you got married, at the time that you got married. And I was like, that is something that, like, if it were me, I would be treasuring it like for generations, right? Like, this would be so, so cool. So yeah, I say that was my first wedding painting. So I've just been thinking about that ever since. And I think there's a market for that. Like, I've seen that there's like live wedding paintings, maybe not like in this style, or I don't want to say like skilled, but I think that I have something to offer there where I could kind of capture somebody's venue or somebody's day in a really, really nice way. So yeah, I on my Instagram, I have a whole like post describing, like, hey, I can come paint at your wedding. And I would, if you're interested, let me know. My weekends are filling up actually really, really fast. So people are interested. So I'm
That's
excited about
awesome.
that. It's kind of this like new avenue to get my work out there and to, yeah, generate some revenue. So
I definitely invite you and have you come to mine whenever I get married. But yeah, I love your work. It's just so happy. Um, it's been really fun plein air painting with you. Um, I know you have a connection with the BYU Museum of Art recently. You did a video about Maynard Dixon. Do you want to talk about that?
yeah, so I guess this was several months ago, actually, but one of the curators there who put together the Maynard Dixon exhibit there, he reached out to me on my Instagram and was like, hey, we're doing this artist panel, and I really think that you would be a good contributor to this. I've been following your work for some time, like you're interested in the national parks and Southern Utah, and your plein air work. Like, he was like, I really would like to add your voice to this panel. And I was, I don't know, kind of starstruck. I didn't realize who was going to be on the panel when I showed up. And it was like Gary Ernest Smith, Russell Case, both like powerhouses in like landscape Southwestern art, like who I had been looking up to for quite some time. And then it was also Abigail Palmer, who's also a local artist. Oh, and I can't remember. There was one more. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah, just that was an incredible opportunity. They wanted to get kind of a range of people who are at different stages of their career. And yeah, like I said, he noticed kind of the influence of Maynard Dixon in my work, which I thought was really impressive that he was able to pick that out, because Maynard Dixon is actually like one of my all-time favorite artists. And I think there's like a special place in my heart for him, because while I was going to BYU, I would go to his paintings. Like, that's and I would just, admire them. And those paintings really are kind of what pushed me towards wanting to paint landscapes. There's just a way that he expresses the desert, this love that he has for the desert and the landscape and the earth, that you can just, it's tangible from his paintings. And I was like, wow, like that looks like an incredible place. I'm seeing beautiful nuances that I'd never like noticed before. And so I wanted to go out and paint where he painted, paint like he painted. That's really, he was really influential in my work in that way.
I'd say it's really successful. You've done a really great job. It's very successful, going out, and your work really, I went to the show a couple weeks ago and it was fantastic, and I can see comparisons. It's just lovely.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny, and maybe you can pull it up. There's one piece of mine that I had never seen this. I mean, they pulled in Maynard Dixon pieces from all across the country, from a lot from the Smithsonian. Like BYU has the largest collection in the US, well, I guess in the world, right, of Maynard Dixon pieces. But they pulled in a lot that I had never seen before. And there was one, this one here. It looked so eerily similar to one of the pieces that was in that exhibit. And it was just, I guess, a testament to like you said, how much he's influenced me, that we're like both being drawn to the same subject matter. And then also just like, this is what the desert looks like, right? Just capturing those colors and capturing, if we're going out into the desert and looking for that inspiration, it's gonna be similar. So
I want to go to one other piece here. It's my personal favorite. I love this so much. It's so quintessentially Utah, the arches, but it's not, average. It's the one lone arch. There's, foreground, midground, background. I really like this piece. Where was it done?
So this was done at like my favorite national park in Utah. It's Capitol Reef. And don't tell your friends, because it's this hidden gem. Like we all know the powerhouses like Zion and Bryce, but like Capitol Reef is just this quaint little, like, it was a Mormon settlement. And so there's just like fruit trees everywhere. But this was done at Capitol Reef. This is Cassidy Arch, and it's named after Butch Cassidy, because it's, the idea was that he would, go rob a bank and then hide out. This is one of his hideouts, but that's what you could say probably for like all of southern Utah. But yeah, so it's Cassidy Arch. And I like how you pointed that out. It's not like this quintessential, like just the arch in the sky, but I was trying to capture kind of the depth that this is, I believe it's the highest arch in Utah.
Wow.
So it actually, you're not seeing, but below it, there's like a 150 foot, 200 foot drop underneath it. So I was just trying to capture kind of that depth and distance implied. So with the kind of the pastel colors in the background, and then just there's these layers of rocks and canyons behind it. And kind of pushing that color, like the purples coming through in the background. Like I said, because I like playing with that, with expressive color, pushing things a little bit further than maybe they should be. And like the same with like the reflected bright reds coming up from the bottom of the arch. Like that's not what it looked like, but it's to give that sense of the light coming back up. So.
I know you love to travel. It seems like you're always going somewhere. Do you have any favorite spots? I know we had a question earlier about, the transition from like Iceland to Utah and Europe. Do you want to talk about travel?
Yes. So that's actually, so my husband's an accountant, and it'll relate, I promise. But he, there's not a lot of places in which like our lives like interact. And I mean that like his brain works completely differently than mine. I'm an artist, he's an accountant, he's a numbers guy. I'm like colors and shapes and like but the one place that we do like have a similar passion is in travel, which has been great because it's a great avenue for me to go paint new exciting places. And then he actually enjoys it as well. Like he's not like super bored. Sometimes he comes out plein air painting with me and he's like, gosh, this is a lot of time where he's just sitting there. But it's, you know, if we're traveling around, he can explore and have fun in that place. The reason we're traveling around so much is because he's actually like an expert travel hacker, where we're able to, and that this is a subject for an entirely different like video, but we get basically free plane tickets to around the world. Like what was it? Just in January, we went to Italy and Greece, and that was incredible. I didn't do any painting out there because that was his like first time in those countries. And so I was like, you know what? This will be for you. It was his graduation present.
Keep it special.
That was for him. But yeah, I love going back to Europe. That's, you know, that was my childhood home. And so there's this familiarity with it. Like it just, you know, when I'm walking down those cobblestone streets and seeing that old architecture, there's just something about it that feels familiar and like home to me. And I love that. And I talked about this on my panel for the Maynard-Dixon one, because it's like, well, if that's the case, then why are you attracted to the Utah landscape? Why is it like, you know, why do you enjoy that so much? If, you know, like your childhood, you grew up in Europe, and and I did the same thing. I cried at the panel and I felt so dumb, but it was really, home was Utah, right? Because I would go back and see my family, and I would see my grandparents and my cousins, like all that. There was so much like nostalgia associated with that Utah desert and Utah landscape. And so I think, you know, for me, that's a lot of like the attraction that I have to it, which I haven't delved into like painting European scenes because it's not what I'm surrounded with by constantly. I probably will in the future, and maybe it'll have that same kind of pull. But yeah, Utah feels like home to me, and it's, like I said, it's absolutely stunning. So.
Lovely. I'm gonna share another fun little slide here. It's you out plein air painting on location. Here we go.
Those are fun to look at because, like I said, my baby's 18 months old now. And so I'm like, what happened? Where did that little tiny thing go? Yeah, that is me plein air painting.
Do you have any, you know, favorite tools for plein air painting or just art in general that you can't live without?
I would say, so I really love, I can't remember what the parent company is called, but this easel that I'm using is a U Go, is the name of the push-out box. So like the letter U.go. I really love those, and it's got, you know, it's a simple tripod setup, but the real hack is my paintbrush holder is actually marketed as a drumstick holder. So a little hot tip.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I found something similar marketed towards artists, and it's of course like $60. And I'm like, okay,
of course,
there's got to be something similar. And it was literally, it's the same device. It's a drumstick holder. So yeah, that's a hot tip for that. I would say one that I can't live without is, and I'm terrible, I don't know the names of any of this. There's a little like white soap, comes in a little like cream plastic thing, and it gets paint stains out of everything. Like I get paint on my clothes all the time, and it just comes right out. So that's another one. As far as like tools go, I think like just use what you have on hand, right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you're starting out, like use the cheap stuff. That's okay. Like there is no magic like brush that's gonna make your artwork like all of a sudden amazing. It's not about the tool, it's about the artist that's using the tool. So I know I've had a lot of professors that like they use the same brushes for like 10 years and they're old and they're disgusting and they're nasty.
They're
And they
perfect.
still keep using them because they get the job done, right? And they add that texture that they couldn't get with a brand new brush.
I remember I asked you once about your little Gamsol container, the metal
Mhm.
container. I thought it was so smart. You took a magnet and you put it in the bottom of the container,
Yeah.
glued a magnet to the lid so it would stick together. And I've done that and it's like changed my life. Just
Yeah.
the
So,
smallest thing was so great.
well, and I love that about like plein air artists is we're always like going and like comparing our setups, like, oh, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Like, what
What
are you,
knowledge.
how are you making it easy? Yeah. So that's, yeah, it's just one of those little hot tips so you don't have a lid hanging out. You can see on that one on the left, I hadn't quite figured that out yet because my lid is hanging out right above my
Right
palette.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah.
Do you have any favorite plein air shows or art craft fairs? Anything coming up?
Um, my favorite plein air show has to be the one in Spring City, Utah. That's the one that I've been going to since I was in high school. That's, I grew up in or went to high school in that area. And so I've been doing that show forever. Such a beautiful little historic town. I think the whole downtown is a historic like monument because they're all historic homes and they're so fun. And it's become kind of this little artist hub. Um, there's Ron Richmond and Kathleen Peterson and who else? I think I wrote. Let me look. I wrote them down because I was like going to put. Doug Fryer, um, Lee Benyon. There's just a whole bunch of little artists that are living down there, and they've made this like their little hub, and they're doing all sorts of fun events down there all the time. But yeah, that's my favorite plein air event because I love the area. It is so stunning. It's so beautiful, and they have the best restaurant, in my opinion. And it's called Das Cafe. If you're ever in the area, it's really great, authentic German food, which is where I lived for 7 years in Germany, so I kind of have a special place in my heart for it. But yeah, I love their plein air event. There's artists that come from all over the country to come in and paint at that one.
Is that an
And then,
invitation or is it
no,
open to all?
anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Go sign up. It's great. It's such a great experience. And then you mentioned I am like markets. I am in the Beehive Bazaar right now currently. So if you would like any of those little like 6x6 small paintings that I've been doing, head on over to there. It's at the Bright Building in Provo, Utah. So
Such a
yeah,
cool
check out the
building.
Beehive Bazaar. Such a fun place. And not don't just look at me. There's plenty of other artists and fun like crafters that are putting together some really cool stuff. So it's really well curated, I would say.
Absolutely. And it's pretty frequent. So it's got a rotating group of artists and crafters. Speaking of markets and shows, are there any galleries that you like or prefer or you're in, things like that?
One day, right? I guess I'd like to be transparent. I feel like I'm at the beginning of this career, right? I'm not in a gallery yet, but hope to be. Um, I'm in a show currently. It's in Tennessee. It's called the Stay Home Gallery, and it's a show that was curated by Tara Carpenter. She's a professor at BYU in art education, and they say it's called Together Alone, and it's exploring motherhood and kind of the loneliness. And not just motherhood, I would say caretakers in general, and kind of the loneliness that comes with that and the pressures of it. And so there's just a whole body of work. You can look it up online and on Instagram, I believe. So, and that the piece that I collaborated with my daughter is in that show right now. And then just locally, there's J. Kirk Richards has a gallery, and he's doing a show, Handscapes, and he does this every year. It's a really fun one where it's all landscapes the size of your hand. Emma, I think you're in that one too, right?
Yep, I'm in it too.
Yeah. So go check out my work. Go check out Emma's work, and they're really affordable too. Like, so if you want to be
Great time to get art.
yeah, if you want to be collecting, that's the place to go.
All righty. Any other questions from our audience that we have for Sarah? People are typing. I can see it. Got a comment. She's amazing. Of course she is.
Thank you, Keith. I think there's one thing I kind of wanted to bring up, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So did we mention, so I'm doing a challenge, 100 paintings, small 6x6. And it's kind of, like I said, part of that working within the constraints of being a mom. And yeah, what works right now is just small pieces, but also it's that challenge of just creating a lot. I think oftentimes artists get in this mindset where it's like, I need to make one just beautiful, inspired piece. And maybe that works for you. For me, it doesn't, right? Like, and there's a book called Art and Fear. And in it, it kind of it describes a lot of the like problems that we go through as artists and how to kind of overcome them. And I have a little snippet I'd like to share from it and kind of what inspired this 100 paintings exercise that I'm doing. And so it says, it's talking about a ceramics class. It says the ceramics teacher announced on opening day that he was dividing the class into 2 groups. All of those on the left side of the studio, he said, would be graded solely on the quantity of the work they produced. All those on the right side on its quality. And his procedure was simple. So basically, you get an A if you have 50 pounds of work, B if you have 40, so on and so forth. And then the other half of the class, they were graded on just 1 pot, but it had to be like perfect. And the idea is like, so who do you think actually ended up creating the better work at the end of the day? It was those that did the quantity, right? So quantity, like doing a lot of work, being consistent, that is what's going to generate quality for you. So it's not about like having the inspiration, having that muse, or like telling you like this is going to be an amazing one piece. It's about, I guess, just showing up, working every day, building those small habits. And especially me as like a mother, I don't have hours and hours of time to work, but like what's more important than the amount of time that you're doing is the consistency, right? So make sure you're working consistently, and that's going to get you to where you want to be. There's also a quote by Chuck Close, and I love it. And it's been kind of my mantra forever, is inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. If you wait around for the clouds to part and a bolt of lightning to strike you in the brain, you're not going to make an awful lot of work. All the best ideas come out of the process. They come out of the work itself. So I guess for like, if you're fearful of getting started on something, like you're like, I don't have the idea. It's just about showing up and doing the work. Maybe I've made a lot of terrible paintings. Like in my opinion, at this like 100 painting challenge, I've made a lot of terrible paintings, but that's great because you still learn from them, right? And you're experimenting and you're not remaining stagnant. You're actually trying to progress. So that's just kind of the advice that I throw out there for people who are trying to improve their work.
Do a lot of quantity over quality.
Absolutely. Quantity over quality. Yep. And I think there's a time and place for like quality as well. Like, I think it's just a balance, right? But I think ultimately you're going to build those habits quicker and faster if you're working on little small pieces rather than one like giant one for ages. It's all that you're learning like those visual problem solving skills and understanding how your brushes work and getting that muscle memory and what colors work together, what doesn't, so.
Awesome. Such great advice. I think that's it. Thank you all for joining us. Be sure to follow Sarah at Sarah and Art. And she has lots of $100 paintings on her Instagram, so be sure to check her out. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon.